Sustainability Committee meeting. You have the agenda in front of you. I will call the meeting to order. Item 2, declarations of conflicts of interest. Seeing none, approval of agenda.
Move. Yeah.
Okay. Business, sorry, approval of minutes, October the 27th.
Move. Second.
Any business arising?
Seeing none?
No, okay. No business arising. Reports and discussions. Item 6, draft of E&S capital budget. Ramona.
So just before we get started, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I just wanted to introduce Alistair Ozon. He's joining us. He's the water coordinator for the city of Charlottetown. So he started a little while back. So he's working with environment sustainability as well as utility on water-related initiatives, anything related to urban watershed management, water conservation, wellfield protection, lots of different projects, stormwater management, etc. So Alistair does have a report to present tonight, but I just wanted to welcome him and introduce them to you.
Welcome, sir. Welcome aboard.
So is Alistair on for 1 year? What's the term?
It's a 1-year contract and started in November, so, but it would be our hope to continue to have this role in the city, because we did have we discontinued a position with the utility that was focused on these types of initiatives.
He's helping too.
Okay, so I wanted to bring forward our first draft of the capital budget. So I have that in front of you. There should be a spreadsheet sort of comparing our 2020-2021 capital budget and then the draft for this year. So really just looking for feedback from the committee at this point. Have we missed anything? Is there anything there that seems out of place? And just kind of looking for some feedback as we move to creating a final capital budget.
Ramona, there was a conversation going back and forth. I think the person's name with the watershed group with I don't know the fish ladder. Did you know what that was?
Yes, so right now there is another report later on about the Climate Challenge Fund. So they were looking to have the city partner with them on an application to the Climate Challenge Fund.
Is that the one that was like 216,000?
Yeah, the total project was 216. My understanding is that they were looking to get 100,000 from the fund, and then
that's the one. Yeah.
The remainder of the funds would be coming from us. I have not had a chance to talk to John further about that project, but I have that on my list for tomorrow. So I haven't currently included that in here. We do have the carryover of the 75,000 that we've already sort of committed to them to do the Barber Pond fish ladder. So it would be an additional 115,000 that they'd be looking for the city. That's my understanding based on the email, but I don't have final confirmation on that. And that would be contingent on receiving funding through the Provincial Climate Challenge Fund.
And was that from that was a separate project? I think that was from the spillway that goes down to the saltwater marsh.
That was my understanding as well, yeah.
Okay. Because I'm not sure that's something that's 100% going to go.
And I'm not entirely sure it'll fit with the fund guidelines either. That's why I wanted to have a bit further conversation.
Well, I think when I talked to John about it, asking about the potential for the spread bass getting up there into the pond.
Right.
And he never really thought of that. I think they were kind of rethinking it, so I think we were going to talk to DFO. Anyway, but I knew there was some kind of an ask there. I wanted you did it.
I did see that, and I do have it on my list to follow up with John to get more information for us.
Right on.
And the timeline for the fish ladder? Do we have a timeline for that?
So they won't be able to start construction. They just got too late in the year, so they'd be moving that forward into the spring of next year. So the first two items, the bottom one on the attachment is the 2021-2022 budget. So we have the two items that we'd be carrying over. That would be the fish pond, the fish ladder project, as well as the bypass highway, the remaining work on phase 1 of that project. and then it's the other items. So right now, we've allocated approximately $3 million for the energy performance contract. This would not be necessarily all city contribution. This would also have funding and other partners kind of covering some of those expenses. But again, that's kind of a placeholder for right now. I just wanted to give you sort of a ballpark of where we're at. We've included some cycling signage. Last year we did, as part of our project, we did road signage for improving cycling. So those have all been purchased and would be installed in the spring. So the idea is that we would focus next year, or this coming year, I guess, on wayfinding signage to improve sort of the active transportation network. We put in some money there for bike racks. This would be on city facilities and properties, as well as to provide through our cost share program that we have with the business community. I put a placeholder of $1 million in there for potential budget for other active transportation projects. So those would be matching funds that we would apply for the PEI Active Transportation Fund. The forest. Yep, of course.
Just before you keep going down, I just had a quick question on the previous budget.
Yep.
The very first one, 200,000, and saying that unlikely we will have expenses on the energy performance contract in 2021 unspent funds. So are you just bringing that forward to the new budget? I'm just wondering why you say it's unspent.
Yeah, so we had put 200,000 in there thinking that we would have expenses within this fiscal, but we didn't have like a very detailed plan of how those funds would be spent. We just wanted to make sure that there were some funds allocated. So we could do that as a carry forward, or we could just look at allocating a fresh budget to the energy performance contract.
So the fresh budget is 3.5 million?
Yes.
Quite a jump from 200 grand.
Yeah, so this is the comprehensive one, right? So we've been working with Honeywell to develop a comprehensive look at all city facilities, including Eastlink and Bell Alliance Center. So the 3.5 million would be for a project of that magnitude. It would be going into all of our facilities, doing lighting at all of them. And that was the one that we're looking for the FCM funding and low interest financing for, that Mon and I have talked kind of a few different times.
So if we wanted to switch the rate zone from ammonia to, say, a Gen 2 system or a Gen 3 system, funding would come from this.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, so that 3.5 million, while it's in the sustainability budget, it would have an impact on a lot of other departments in terms of, it would be some deferred maintenance projects, it would be upgrades to buildings. So yes, it's in this budget, but it kind of would solve problems in a number of different
Right,
departments.
so it solves problems. Also, it's always geared towards energy efficiency.
It is, well, there are a couple things in there that aren't entirely primarily motivated by energy efficiency. So one, renewables is energy generation. So that would be one project, would be a solar project is included in
Yeah,
that.
but still, all that's, yeah.
One item that we've looked at is called healthy buildings. So it's new air ventilation systems that you put in public buildings that are intended to support situations like this, where we've got a COVID pandemic and we're looking at how do you improve air quality in buildings. So there's a couple items in that project right now that are not specifically energy efficiency initiatives, but we're refining that, and that would be clarified to council what we'd be looking for.
But they're still helping to greenhouse gases, either one or the other.
There's benefits to them, and they would still be considered by FCM to be eligible. It's more that the overall project has to create an overall impact in energy efficiency.
So I assume you've been talking to Scott Adams, and you've been talking on the new public works building on.
Yeah, absolutely. Scott, so Scott and Frank and Richard have all been, and then Sue and Stu from the other two
Right.
organizations have been with us every step of the way.
Can we just, I'm just trying to get a global footprint, so we're just, where are we at now? The 3.5 million for 20?
Yeah, so we're at the bottom section, we did the 3.5 million. I talked about the wayfinding signage, that's 35,000. I talked about the bike racks, that's 25,000. I talked about the 1 million for the other active transportation projects. Again, this is a placeholder, so 1 million's in there right now in the draft, with the intent that we would be applying for funds for a number of different projects, and we'll talk about some of those projects in the later report. The forestry trailer, so this has been kind of one way to manage some of our storage issues as well as kind of keep all our things in one place. So these are trailers that we can tow behind a truck. They would have all our tools and everything in one place, so we can bring them to tree planting sites or when we're doing street tree plantings. The water bottle refill stations has come up a few times.
Where would you store that trailer?
It would be out at the Public Works area. The water bottle refill station, so we were thinking about 3 indoor locations for water refill as well
Schools.
as 1 outdoor fountain.
Schools or just public buildings?
Yeah, what I'd love us to see us do is make sure we have them in all of our own
We
facilities
wouldn't do
first.
schools, public school grants can work out in the school.
Yeah, we put Prince Street School, is what we put one in at West Roy.
Utility
In
has
the
some
school?
Yeah.
donations.
Yeah.
What's that?
Utility has done some donations of water refill stations to schools, so I think we've done Birchwood, Prince Street,
Why wouldn't we do
Grass
that? Why wouldn't we do
Royalty.
our own buildings first? Why would we do public school grants?
And so that's what we're suggesting here. So that was in the utility budget, but this is part of our budget, so we'd be looking to make sure that we address our own facilities where we have the public entering, to make sure they have refill stations in there, and then add 1 more outdoor fountain. So we right now have 1 in Olabar Park and 1 in Connaught
Connaught
Square,
Square.
and it'd be great to
One of
have.
the dog park in Hillsborough Park too.
And you have 1 at the Hillsborough Park, top park. Great, so I knew we had 3. So the idea there would be the install and purchase of those. The next item, we do have, we're not having any luck finding funding for an electric vehicle.
Well, get Amanda to look at it.
What's that?
And I thought you were gonna find some money for us.
Hamad has made so many applications for EV infrastructure, it's not, so we haven't,
You're doing a great job.
we're trying to figure out how we test this. We're at a position, we're at a point now where we need to be putting them in the fleet so we can actually see how they perform. Sustainability doesn't have a fleet, so we can make that recommendation to Public Works to start looking at changing over their fleet to electric vehicles, and that work is kind of starting to happen. But we were looking to include 1 in our budget to ensure that at least 1 got purchased by the city next year for testing, promotions, events.
All in training.
all
How many charging stations do we say we're going to walk around the city?
18 are going up.
And I assume some of them are at the new public works building?
We've included in the design for Public Works building the installation of an EV charging. Yeah.
And there'll be some here at City Hall, 1 here at
Yes.
City Hall.
There'll be 2 here at City Hall.
Parks Canada has, Eric Allen has 3.
Yeah.
And if you go to the PGI Brewing Company, they have 2.
So
Popular.
I would be in favor of picking like an electric
Oh,
vehicle.
God, yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, there's.
Who's gonna drive it?
Pardon?
Who would drive it?
Well, I was just gonna say, I think that there was a vehicle.
Chair.
There was a vehicle that we used to
Oh,
have.
don't worry, I'm gonna drive it outright.
Until it got really busy, but then, there's always been a spare vehicle for different managers that need to pop up and go here and go there, and get lights flame on, or like
That's-
call jobs doing or whatever. And that, since that vehicle in the summertime, since they've gotten more busy and public works needed it, people are just using their own vehicles and getting mileage. And it might not be a bad idea to have an electric vehicle, have it right there for just that reason, people gotta pop it and go here and go there. I think you have to show at
So
some point that.
The last 2 years, we did rent a vehicle for our staff. So we do our cosmetic pesticide inspections, we do tree inspections, we have people on the road attending meetings and events all the time. So the last couple of years, we rented a vehicle from May to sort of end of October for that purpose, so that we weren't paying out mileage for all those trips. And it worked out quite well to share a vehicle. That was kind of my intent with this. And basically, what they do is they keep track of it down at the front desk. You have to have your license, you have to sign it in and out, and that's how it would be used, but open to suggestion.
Well, I think at some point, Mr. Chair, I think
What do you think, Chair?
we're supposed to be. We're
Like the
supposed
idea?
to.
What?
You like the idea?
I like the idea, but I think that we're gonna acquire the vehicle. I think the manager will be in charge of it, as to who uses it and when. I think we should sign in through Ramona. Gives Ramona an opportunity to take that vehicle out in the different areas, different projects that we're working on. So, that's how I see it unfolding.
Well, I think at some point, Mr. Chair, I think,
What?
I think we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be.
What?
We're supposed to be.
What do you think, Chair?
We're supposed to be.
You recall the meeting that we were at with Maritime Electric?
Yeah.
Angus Orford said the average car user in Charlottetown probably drives 43 to 45 kilometers per day. That's high end.
You know, guys.
So
I
that's
know-
not too bad.
I know in an open session, you're reducing your budget discussions is in a closed session.
Good point.
So.
But this is just preliminary, right?
Yeah.
This is nothing fixed to anything. This can change a lot.
You know what, Terry, to be honest with you, I don't mind our projects we're looking at being discussed in a public forum. I don't mind that, to be honest with you. You know, I think it's good. It shows people that,
No, it's up to you.
Yeah.
Usually that's the policy, because I mean, you know,
I don't-
here we're discussing budget items here, and
we're just
council
looking at,
hasn't had a chance to look at these yet.
No.
That's usually why they do what they do.
yeah, I know.
You
But
know, I know what you're
as,
saying, then it ends up in the paper, we're gonna buy an electric car, we're not gonna buy an electric car, and the rest of the council.
you know what, these are projects that we're entertaining.
Yeah, Ramon is quite very clear from the first start. This is just preliminary. This will change a lot by the time we pass the budget. But a
Yeah,
good
well,
point there.
yeah, and that's what confuses the public. And that's why, that's when the public's aware, once everybody has had a chance to see what's in the capital budget, and agree to the value. But anyway, we like to confuse the public, so.
Electric charging outlets for City Hall?
Yeah, so we did just talk about how there's going to be charging stations here at City Hall, but those charging stations are intended for public use, and they have what's called the flow meter, as well as a device that enables people to pay for their electricity use, so they're actually a much more expensive unit than what you actually need to charge an electric vehicle. So the intent here with this electric charging outlet for City Hall is that this would be a simple electrical outlet for just charging a city electric vehicle. We don't need the elaborate system that you would use for a public charger, so it's going to be less expensive. So we included that. The tablet, I think, needs to be removed and added to the IT budget, so please excuse that. And then there's a couple, there's just a little bit of funds required to do a couple new vegetable planters and some signage. That was normally included in our operational budget, but as it is a capital expense, it should be, we moved it over here.
Okay.
So again, just if public's listening or media's listening, this is a draft budget. This is our first kind of sort of summary that's coming from some of the discussions we've had at the staff level, and just looking for feedback now as we prepare the actual capital budget for the department and for
Mr. Chair?
council.
Could I just ask one thing about what you're proposing? Last year you made proposals. I think we stuck to some of them, waived off from others. But Ramona, on the bypass multi-use, you've split it in two, right?
Yes.
894 and where's the other? 760, correct?
Yes.
So I looked at I know you're quite familiar with the Active Transportation Fund Project Contribution Agreement. So there's 5 million in that fund. Is there
Yes.
another 2 million?
Not that I'm aware of, but funding guidelines change a lot, so the 5 million is the only amount I'm
That you're
aware of
working
through
with.
the PIAT.
What's the two money you're talking about?
I just read in one of the agreements, and I'll look at it a little more. I'll look at it later on. But of the 5 million, the city is getting a good share of that pot of money. Is that safe to say?
Well, I mean, I don't know if we're getting
I thought it was maxed at $1 million.
I
For
think,
municipalities.
It's
Yeah,
a
I
million
think
and
they're-
then 500,000, right?
I don't think they would award any more than 1.5 million to one applicant,
Right.
but it certainly will be our intent to bring any project forward that has the support of council to be looking at getting funding through that fund if it was eligible.
Because we did get funding for the multi-use active transportation pathway along Beech Grove Road.
Yes,
Yeah.
and for the crossings at Fitzroy and at
Right.
Longworth.
Thank
So
you,
we
Mr.
got
Chair.
about $1 million this year, and it would be our goal to get at least that.
Next year. Thank you.
Okay, well, what do we got next?
Yeah, so just any further feedback on the draft?
No, I
as it
mean,
stands?
we're gonna be looking at projects for actual transportation at a later date, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Projects that I'd certainly like to advance. So, I guess our next item is the draft transit capital budget. Mona, please.
So very similar discussion to the previous report. I've summarized sort of the plans that we had for last year's budget and the early draft plan of this year's coming budget. So we had split the project into two for the purchase of the full-size units. The minibuses will arrive in this fiscal year. We'll receive 3 of our 6 full-size units in this fiscal and 3 of the full-size unit in next year. So the $4.5 million project that's noted in the 2020-21 budget, that is actually only half of that will be spent in this year, and then the other half is included in the capital budget for this coming year. And then, as we discussed last meeting, the provinces had said that they will accept our application now for our transit fleet renewal and electrification project. So that would be, what I've included there is the total cost for year 1 of a 7-year program, and I've noted that the city's share is $700,000.
And we'll start that next year, 2021, 2022?
Yes,
Great. Over 7 years?
yes.
Perfect. Electric, here we come.
Ramona, I want to just deviate from the script there for a minute. It's great that we've formed the partnership with the current contractor regarding buses. But as everyone in this room knows, there's other modes of transportation. And one of the ones that took a real hit during this whole thing with COVID was our taxi industry. So what I'd like to do is open up discussions with the taxi industry to see what we can do to help facilitate opportunities and options for them, and whether it becomes, using electric taxis, and to see if there's funding available for them as well, because they play an indispensable role in our community. Taxi industry has been around for a long time, and maybe we can be proactive, maybe even visionary in working with our taxi industry, because they do move a lot of folks in our community and take them to specific locations. So I don't know what mechanism would be in place that we could look at, what other jurisdictions do. Maybe we can be on the cutting edge and work with the taxi industry as well. It's great to have sustainable funding for the buses. That's all well and good, but our taxi industry, I would suggest, play a very important role in transportation in this city. So I just wanted to bring that to the table, Ramona. And maybe you and I can meet with representatives from the taxi industry to see what we can do to advance moving into the type of energy proficiency. So just wanted to bring that to the table. Like I said, I have a special place in my heart for the taxi industry. They've been around a long time. They took a major hit during this COVID. It really hurt them, and maybe we can work with them. Thank you. Okay.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
do we have a definition for transit, Ramona? Does it include taxis, or does it include bus services? I think we'll have to get that straightened out first.
What do you mean, definition?
Well, see, the transit, the money comes from the transit fund.
Right. Yeah.
So-
Well, you know what? There might be other funding.
I know, but
Yeah.
if transit is defined as multiple.
I understand that. I understand
Then
that.
you may have to look
Yeah,
at
I-
asking an amendment to.
Yeah, I understand that.
Thank you.
I understand all of that, okay? But I'm just going to reiterate what I just said.
Oh, yeah, I
Okay?
understand.
Taxi industry
Yeah.
is just as important as our transit, and I'd like to give them an opportunity to work with us. And whether it becomes electric taxis or whatever, opportunities that may or may not exist. I'd like to work with them because they do play such a very important role. And why wouldn't the city of Charlottetown be the leaders? We don't always have to be the followers. We can be on the cutting edge. We can be the leaders. So that's why I bring that forward.
So do you want to set up a fund? Want to set up a fund through the city of Charlotte to help them switch on to electric?
You know what, Terry? To be honest with you, I'm not really sure.
Okay.
What I want to do is I want to look at.
Yeah.
I want to look at.
So that's why I'm asking, what is your idea?
Well, I want to. I don't know. I want to talk to them first. I want to look at some models. I want to see what takes place in other jurisdictions, and then maybe it could come to that. But right now, I just want to explore it.
Yeah.
That's all I want to do.
Yeah. Go for it.
No old saying, nothing venture, nothing gain.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you. Okay, the next item, C, Better Homes Neighborhood Energy Project. Katrina,
Yes, thank you.
take it away.
So this is just to update you on the Better Homes Neighborhood Energy Project, which was a collaboration between the city and Efficiency PEI. It began last fall and we just wrapped it up in October. So the project supported 40 homes in the Sherwood neighborhood in the transition to using less energy. So each of the homes received a free energy audit, a one-on-one consultation about their energy use and retrofits that they could do. They also received access to all Efficiency PEI rebate programs, free air sealing, and access to funding for energy upgrades. And then in exchange for that, they were required to do a pre and post survey to help us learn about how the government can support homes and buildings in the transition to using less energy and increase uptake of energy retrofits. So as our wrap up and kind of a thank you to each household, we did a drive-by electric vehicle parade. Originally we wanted to do a block party, but that was not quite possible because of COVID. So we got 3 electric vehicles together with Efficiency PEI and city branding. And the mayor was nice enough to help us out and join city staff and staff from Efficiency PEI to deliver some thank you gift bags. So people were very appreciative of that event, and I think it was a great success.
It was, and I was very appreciative that you took me along.
Well, thank you.
It was great. That's when a man was trying to sell an electric car.
Yes.
Hasn't stopped since. It was a great event. I really appreciate going.
Oh, good. I'm
And
glad.
every door that we went to, they were very, well, they were still asking questions. How can I make my home much more
Yeah.
energy efficient? So the follow-up was excellent. So kudos to both of you.
Oh, thank you. It was a good opportunity to engage with the residents. So then just to update you a little bit as well, we've done some analysis on the survey results and had some interesting findings. So there was a couple different trends that emerged from that analysis. One was an increased interest in additional energy efficiency upgrades. So looking at the different Efficiency PEI programs, there was a lot of interest in continuing the upgrades in addition to what they received with the program. We saw an increased understanding of home energy efficiency, particularly in the technical area, so as opposed to behavioral understanding, which people sort of understood beforehand. We also saw increased uptake in behavioral changes. So, for example, people reported using more LED fixtures and lights, unplugging their small appliances when not in use, and things like that. There was some neighborhood buzz about. People reported having more conversations with their neighbors and in their community, which was one of the goals of the project. And we saw a lot of satisfaction with the program. So over 90% of participants rated the program at either 4 or 5 stars. And one of the most reported beneficial reported outcomes was the learning of where their houses were losing heat and the receipt of a plan of concrete steps to increase the energy efficiency of their homes. So that's kind of what we have to date. One of the most valuable products of the project will be the comparison of the energy consumption at the household and neighborhood level before and after the project. But because many of the upgrades are still taking place, we won't actually receive all of that data until 2022. But at that time, a final report will be done. And sort of moving forward, Efficiency PEI has interest in offering this in other municipalities around the island as well as in other neighborhoods in Charlottetown.
So this was a collaboration between Efficiency PEI and the City of Charlottetown.
Correct, yeah.
And remember when we were talking about presenting this, we also talked about doing it in other parts of the city.
Yep.
So do you guys look yet at what other areas of the city you'd like to do with that? Have you got that far yet?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Ramona, but it's certainly something on our radar and that we're interested
Just
in.
kind of here's
But
how it rolled out, here's what the results were.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
So, if we go to look for, do the program again, this is in consultation with energy efficiency PM.
I imagine so, yeah.
Okay. Right on.
Any questions for Trina? Good report. Good report. Keep up the good work. Okay. PACE, enabling bylaw, Ramona and Haman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to bring everyone up to speed, in 2019, the city began a process in developing the PACE program in partnership with the PACE Atlantic Community Investment Corporation. So this was a program in which 4 municipalities worked together to come up with it, and it was brought to this committee in June of 2019, got your approval to move forward. This is one of the programs mentioned in this community energy plan. So this program provides low interest financing to homeowners and business owners to invest in energy efficiency upgrades and renewable energy. Currently, the MGA Act is being amended to enable PACE on the island, and it was also mentioned in the document the mayor provided today, which is an article from The Guardian. The approach would be to remove financial barriers associated with upfront cost investing energy retrofits and renewable energy, and the logistics barriers found in applying for those rebates. Currently, the FCM GMF funding has been applied through PACE Atlantic CIC for the 3 municipalities which move forward: Town of Stratford, Town of Wolfville, and City of Charlottetown. Up to 30% of this financing, which would be provided to the business and homeowners, could be used for non-energy related initiatives, including lead water line replacement, climate change adaptation, and more. So the city of Charlottetown worked with the Town of Stratford to develop a bylaw so that both the bylaws are similar for both of the municipalities. So today we're bringing it to committee so that you folks approve to bring it forward to council for first reading. It is attached as PACE bylaw 2020 PACE 01.
Mr. Chair, there was something in the paper this morning about Prince Edward Island making big moves in energy efficiency. It talks about PACE, property assessed clean energy. I just have a copy for the committee members. It's Jessie Hitchcock. You remember Jessie Hitchcock? She worked at Energy PEI, Energy Efficiency PEI.
That was in the paper.
Yeah, did you see it this morning?
Yes, I did, yeah.
What did you think of it?
Just one second. Are you done your report?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Good report.
Thank you.
I just got a question for you.
Sure, go ahead, Terry.
So I'm like, this fund is a $300 million fund from the federal government. So there's no cost here really to the city of Charlottetown. Is that correct?
Essentially, we're accessing low-interest financing that's been made available by FCM. So FCM is extending this low-interest financing to us, and we're allowed to use it to extend it to homeowners. So there's not really risk to the city in that it's not our money that we're lending out. We're using the federal money to provide options for homeowners to be able to access this financing.
So is there a cap on it or no?
So it depends on the size. I think for us, they had 7 million, is that right, for Prince Edward Island? That it would be,
Somewhere around there.
that would be extended as much as we could possibly that they would sort of give to us. But it is based on the value of the home. There's a number of kind of tools that we use use to assess whether we can extend financing to that person, and they can't be in arrears with any of our billing or anything.
Right.
But it's not actually city money, and then it's similar to other FCM funding where when they give you low interest financing, they give you up to 15% in grants. So the grant money would be used to operate the program, and the financing we would be extending to homeowners and small businesses. It's kind of a different concept than we've used before, but it's actually getting quite common in Canada.
Halifax, I think they're
Yeah.
supposed to be doing it.
Exactly,
I
so
think from
Solar
what I've
City,
heard from Katrina's report, some of the constraints have been getting money to do it, so then, am I gonna get my payback or not?
Exactly.
So
so you get
this
your
is not-
energy audit, it comes back, you could do everything and have an extremely energy efficient foam for $40,000, but you don't have $40,000 available. So essentially, we would extend very low interest financing to the homeowner for the $40,000. They would make a payment roughly equivalent to the savings that they were going to receive through these upgrades, and over time they would pay for those projects. And once they're paid out, then they would be recouping those savings. Or they can decide, I don't want to access the funding, I've got $40,000, I want to pay for it. They could go through that process and decide to not opt into the financing, but we'll still provide that support.
They're not getting money, they're just getting the money at low interest.
Yeah, exactly.
So is it much more lower than what mortgages are today?
Yes, so like the interest rate on some of these is close to zero. It's more that there will be some administrative costs.
Sure.
But part of that cost that they're paying is also somebody that's going to coordinate everything on their behalf. So somebody that's applying for all the programs, applying for all the rebates, essentially having a one-stop shop to say, I want to do the solar panel and the insulation. Okay, you make it happen for me. They contact all the contractors, they organize all that piece, they apply for all the rebates, and they just send you a bill when it's all complete, and you pay that off kind of through installments.
And that would be probably less than 1% interest.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a really great.
Yeah, so it makes it lucrative without us having to extend. Now, one of the items that we did talk about at the last meeting, I think you mentioned this, is maybe we would consider adding on rebates to the existing rebates at Efficiency PEI to make it even more lucrative. So I floated this idea with Efficiency PEI. They said you're already getting an excellent rebate on things like heat pumps. Like, we don't need to really increase that at all. We could do something on solar. They said the one thing that people don't take them up on as much as they would like is the air sealing insulation. And it's not like the most exciting thing to do to insulate your house, but as far as cost benefit, it's one of the best.
That's just your attic you're talking about? You said
Attics,
yours.
basements, like,
Walls.
throughout the building,
What's the
even
ratio?
window replacements. People don't tend to pick those options. They might even skip those options and go right to solar, which actually isn't the best. Sort of, they
What's the
should be working
ratio?
on efficiency.
If you wanted to say replace windows or ceiling, seal there with walls and ceilings and all that, what's the ratio?
Like of how many people opt to do that,
No,
or like
no,
what
no,
their R
no.
rating
Let's say,
they are?
let's say you wanted to do your own house.
Yeah,
What would it be, a 50-50, or would it be a 60-40, or 70-30? How does that work?
of the funding?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's based on how much you improve the R value. So if you have a really low R value and you bring it up to R30, they will give you, like, it's not, they don't give the static rate. It's like they look at what you're going to do, and they give
Each one is
you a-
assessed on an individual basis.
Yeah, I did my kitchen, for instance, and my rebate was for insulation was $900, and it was like a big chunk of my house. So, but you don't know that it's going to be that until kind of they do all the assessments. So
Now, I did my windows, and I knew what my rebate was going to be. I did my heat pump, I knew what my rebate was going to be. They'll list them on the energy efficiency side.
Did you replace the windows?
Yeah.
So
They were pretty well, the rebate was pretty well.
how much of a help
50%.
was it?
Pardon?
How much of a help was it?
50%,
Well, the
70%?
heat pump was, pardon?
Was it 50% new windows?
No. Depends what you're paying for the window, but they have a fixed cost for the window, what they give you. So when you replace a window, it's a fixed rebate. Same with the heat pump, there's a fixed rebate. So the size of the heat pump, depends what you want to spend on a heat pump.
Let's say the great big bay windows cost you $1,000.
Still a fixed cost.
What? So what will they pay?
Well, the ones I replaced were $250 each,
Yeah.
and if I remember correctly, my rebate was $100 per window.
For each one?
Yeah.
It's not bad. It's a good deal. Okay, any other questions?
And I think the heat pump, Mr. Chair, there was a rebate from energy efficiency data, there was also a rebate from the company. So I think that was getting close to, I think it was $500 for the energy data, $300 for the couple, so it's $800. I think the heat pump, they're running on 1,500?
Yeah, they're about
Or
$1,500.
$2,000, so.
Mine must have been, because I got $1,200 rebate for my heat.
Is that what it was?
I don't
I think
know.
mine was 5 and 3. So,
Yeah,
So you still have oil too?
yes, and a wood stove.
What?
I would stop.
but my oil was cut in half.
Was it?
The
With the heat pump?
cut in half.
I'd like to look
Even
at
the electrical
inflation.
bill goes up too.
Mine was-
And does it effectively flow all through the house?
Right.
The one that we got, yeah, we're happy with that.
No, does it, again, does it heat the whole house?
Perhaps you can work that.
Okay,
Some people will put a couple, you just see more than one heat pump on the house, you see. For ours, the way the layout is,
Yeah.
the one heat pump we got work.
okay.
Our neighbor just put in 2.
Pardon?
Our neighbor just put in 2.
Yes, it depends on how old your house, how cut up it is, and they need to cut up.
So can I just get a clarification, Mr. Chair? So the FCM fund for the island amount, is it 7 million? Is that what you heard?
I'd rather look back at the application and refine it, because it's based on all the municipalities that are included. I want to
59
know
municipalities.
exactly how much is allocated for PEI.
Could you find that out for the
Yep,
next meeting,
certainly.
please?
Yep,
Good to get that information out.
absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So the recommendation we have here is that currently we're just on a pause a little bit with this because the MGA amendments are in front of the legislature, but they haven't yet been passed. So we can't do first reading until that change has been made to the MGA. But we're looking for approval from the committee that once that change has been made, that we would bring this forward for first reading. That might be at the December meeting.
Okay.
We may have to postpone till January, but it's my understanding that it will be going.
Sure.
Okay,
Great idea.
Greg, you want to move?
What's that? What's that?
Changes?
Yeah, that's fine.
Second?
Well, we have to do a resolution, yeah.
All in favor? You don't know?
Thank you very much.
Okay. Good work, Mom. Recommendations from the ET Task Force, Capital Projects 21-22. Ramona.
Okay, so I believe some of you have seen the presentation brought forward by Bike Friendly Charlottetown, Mitch Underhay, on the projects he'd like to see us moving forward with with active transportation. He presented this to our Mayor's Active Transportation Task Force last meeting, and so in response to his presentation, they have submitted a letter to this Environment and Sustainability Committee outlining some of the priorities that they would like to see looked at as part of our capital budget. Again, these are sort of based on the recommendations of Bike Friendly Charlottetown. So they've talked about a few ones, the bypass highway, continuing to work on that, the Grafton Street connection, so that's required because we'll be coming up the Hillsborough Bridge, will need some improvements there. They've also talked about a couple of different sort of modular blocks projects, which would be Nassau Street and Queen Elizabeth Drive, as well as Maple. They're talking about Pine Drive, but my understanding is that's Maple Drive, like by the
It is. Maple
elementary
Avenue.
school.
Maple Avenue.
And then a small connection on all of our parks. So they wanted to present these to the Environment and Sustainability Committee to be considered as part of our priorities for active transportation for next year's budget.
I just want to go back on one thing, Chair. It does say here that the heat pump up to $1,200 rebate.
Wow. What would it cost for a heat pump, Ted?
Well, I think my unit was around 2,000, 2,500.
And you get a $1,200 rebate.
Well,
It's a
I
good deal.
but
I think mine was about 4,200.
I think it's up to what size you're buying. It's up to $1,200.
So, Mr. Chair, you went to the meeting. Is this the same meeting that we followed up with Ramona, with Mitch Underhead? And the numbers here, I'm looking in the report.
It's the same presentation, so the mayor's task force saw the same presentation that you saw.
The only thing it said is it said in the minutes that the map was taxed and there's no map tax.
Oh, okay. Right, so what question do they mention in the letter?
From Sugarwood, Queen Elizabeth Drive.
Yeah, some of these are mapped in the presentation. I can circulate to those to the members if you'd like to have a closer look at it. Some of these align well with with sort of priorities that we've been discussing at the staff level.
Yeah. Now, what I read made sense. It's,
No, sorry about
see it on
that,
the
it
map
does
too.
include.
So maybe
Yeah.
send that to me, I appreciate it.
Okay.
And at the moment, the money is coming from what pool of money? The Active Transportation Fund, the COVID-19 Resiliency Fund, or is it the
I don't-
Safe Restart Agreement? Do we know?
The PEI-AT fund is absolutely there and we will apply for it. I don't have a final answer from the province whether they're going to fund AT projects under the COVID resiliency fund. It is allowed in the terms of the funding agreement at the federal level, but that it all depends whether the province wants to use the money in that way.
Right.
If they have a piece of that pot of money that they want to put towards active transportation, it's 80% funding, and we can absolutely apply to that, and I certainly would want to see us do that, but I don't know for certain whether they're willing to entertain AT project applications.
So, correct me if I'm wrong here. Option 1, option 1, 2, option 1 and 2 had 3 categories of funding. We're looking at 1, 2, or 1 and 2.
My understanding, 1 is the only one that is in stone that we know we have access to. So that would be my first priority, is to look at that fund where we know that it's for AT, and then to try to understand better whether they will entertain applications to the resiliency fund.
No, just to clarify my questions. Mitch presented 3 possibilities, 3 options.
Yes.
Right? So, and that included going Maple Avenue, Towers Road,
Yes.
remember how Summer Street and so
Yes,
forth?
right, sorry.
Are we looking at 1, option 2, or option 1 and 2? What's this letter focused on?
That letter is to endorse the priorities that Bike Friendly Charlottetown put forward. And they outlined the 5 projects that they liked the most that Mitch had presented in his
But
presentation.
I think there's an agreement that council had made already. Now, let me know if I'm off track here, but right now, the active transportation funding that we applied for, it's going in 2, possibly 3 phases. That's the hospital to St. Peter's Road to Norwood Road down to Rapid Point Road, Rapid Point down to Meadow Road.
Yeah.
That was going to be over a 3-year period.
These
Possibly
options,
2.
these options
The
are
Norwood
different.
Road could go to Meadow Road as phase 2.
Yeah.
These options are different.
But it's out of the same fund.
That's what I'm trying to find out. We're taking from the same fund, right?
Yes, there's only one fund that's
That's
100%
the $5
for
million
sure,
fund.
and that's the $5 million one.
Okay.
So that's what I'm saying. So, and I think if what I'm being told is true, it's going to be capped. Like, City of Charlotte can't go and take $3.5 million
No.
or whatever of a $5 million fund. We're trying to do the whole island.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a bit of a cap of how much the City of Charlotte can access per year. So, in my mind, it always sounds like the first 3 phases are taking most of the allocation, at least for the next year.
So we can't do any other projects, is that what you're saying?
Well-
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just talking about this particular fund.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
But his options,
But
1,
you're still
2,
funding under Public Works.
or option 1 and 2
Public
are
Works.
not the same as what we were talking about.
Yeah.
These are outside of that.
Right.
So,
So, what I'm saying is, so we've already have an agreement to do from here to here.
yeah,
Those are great ideas,
yeah.
but you gotta finish this one first. That's
What
priority
we're doing
one.
the bypass, yeah,
Yeah.
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 But could we not look at, Mr. Chair, look at capitalizing some of these other options
through this city.
And that's what I'm saying, there's other options there.
Yeah, and I think that's what we
I
might.
mean, through the city's corporation.
Yeah,
Wow.
well, they're not always gonna have money available through other levels of government.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I want to explore all possibilities.
So do I think the whole committee wants
I mean,
to.
I got some projects I want to advance too.
Yeah.
And then
Separate from these?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I do have, so I do, like the running list that Scott and Frank and I are working off, it does include those items,
Yeah,
but
that's
it
fine.
includes other priorities that have come up over
Yeah.
the last number of years too. So the ones that we've been priority one, as you mentioned, is finishing the commitment we've made to the bypass
Bypass.
highway project. So we want to get the second part of phase one done, and we also want to do phase two, maybe phase three, depending on costing. So those are already in there. The Grafton Street, I don't think we need to do that work there because we need to make the connection when we come off the Hillsborough
Okay.
Bridge. So that part is on there. We've talked about improvements on Capitol Drive. Again, that's not all about active transportation, but we could include a piece of that for active transportation. We've talked about the West Royalty Trail system that
Sean Murphy.
Sean Murphy has brought forward. We've talked about making a connection between Charlottetown Rural.
So when did you talk with the one Sean Murphy brought forward?
That was with Mike Friendly. He brought it up.
Okay.
Mitch Underwood.
And again, sorry, these are just ones we've talked about beyond what,
Yeah.
No, the reason I asked is apparently he wants to commit a Parks and Rec.
yeah, so that's from Frank, so they've sort of brought that they want to talk to the committee about that.
Okay.
We've talked about a connection from Charlottetown Rural, sort of Hermitage Creek extension up to UPEI. There's improvements needed on the Simmons connection that connects Queen Charlotte and
University Avenue connection.
We've talked about the University Avenue. We've talked about the Victoria Park loop and making the connection on the PE Home property. We've also talked, there's been a lot of discussion, this came forward with Frank today, about what do we do about the Victoria Park bike lane and long-term vision about, how we want that section of the city to look. And
Well-
then also looking at pilot projects with the modular blocks. So there's no shortage of ideas. It's trying to sort through sort of
Well, one-
bike-friendly Charlottetown's priorities, Meriton active transportation priorities, and all of our priorities to come up with something that makes sense.
Greg?
Just a quick question. So the deadline is what, December 3rd?
December 4th.
December 4th. So at what point are we going to put something together where we prioritize all these ideas?
So right now, we had a meeting today, Frank, Scott, and I. So we each kind of I have 4 on the list, and Scott's got 3 on the list, and Frank's got 4 on the list that we need to go back and get some costing information for. Once we have a rough costing, then we can see, do we need to even prioritize? Are we within about 1.5 million, or are we getting way outside of what we could actually get funding for? And and then my understanding is that each committee that's moving a project forward, so projects that Frank has will have to go to Parks and Rec, projects that I have will have to come to here, and Public Works will have discussion about their
In
priorities.
terms of reference, it does say to coordinate, this year's department is to coordinate effort between the other departments to improve funding and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
It all comes back here.
well,
Recommendations are made, other departments too.
So we have a short timeline, December 4th, right?
So once we have our costing information and we have a recommendation at the staff level, we could forward that to this committee to help us refine that. If we may not need to refine the list, is kind of what I'm
And
hoping.
that's what I think, it's when you're top, you're already gonna have that roadmap.
Yeah, and some of those projects aren't construction phase, they're more design phase next year, which is a much smaller funding requirement. So once we have that kind of lined up.
And the AP is still 50% cost sharing.
It is. That's why it would be
That's why I
amazing
put
if the
that.
COVID stream was open, because it's 80%.
Yeah, 80%.
But 50% is
Got
still
money.
wonderful and amazing if we can get that. So maybe we could circulate that probably by email, because it's gonna, we know it's coming up fast. We've committed to all
That's
of
the
our
week.
costing and project descriptions
Yeah,
done by
'cause the
Tuesday.
application, do you have any applications in yet?
No,
So we're looking at December 4th. with that.
yeah, next week. Now, their application form is not super onerous. You need to have a map, a project description, and a rough estimate. It's not
Original application?
Yeah, it's not gonna break us to do it like that.
Julie?
Is multi-purpose trail and an active transportation trail the same thing?
Yes.
So when I'm looking at like Norwood Road and those places that we've talked about, because safety purposes too,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
So are they on the docket anywhere?
Yes, so Norwood Road is part of phase 2.
But only a small piece of the Norwood?
Yeah, so it would be Norwood Road to
The overpass.
the overpass, and what is the street what is the overpass street?
Oak Drive.
Oak Drive.
Yeah, but I meant like when I was begging for like my people at the top, when they're walking.
Norwood Road itself.
Yeah, so that the families can walk to the bus stop safely, so they can bike down the hill safely. It's a very busy street. That was kind of one that I,
Cindy lives on it.
oh yes, she does. She might be able to speak for me. Because there is, no, but really, there's many, many, many families that are at the top there, and those kids to access bus, to park, school
But
buses.
that's more in the public works budget.
Okay, that's what I was just asking though, if it's all, that's why I asked if it was the same multi-purpose and active, right?
Well,
Because they're all working together for these
Yeah,
trips.
one project I'd like this committee to look at is the proposed underpass there on University Avenue. The province is willing to pay 80%. And I think we gotta take a serious look at it, because let's say it's a $3 million project, it's only gonna cost us maybe $200,000. So the minister's made it quite clear, he's very supportive, and we'd like to see that project go ahead.
Council, I fully agree with you, but it's going right under the middle.
Yep.
I know. We'll have this argument many times. but
No,
that's
it's not a
fine.
question, no, hold on. Not a question of arguments, right? What we need to do, and I keep preaching this, is bring in the engineer, right? Let's have a discussion with the engineer, who is responsible for widening University Avenue, responsible for putting in the road into the university, the new one, and work for Parks and Recreation, revitalizing all those pathways and walkways come from Heritage Creek. So, once again, the provincial government, for this particular project, is willing to pay 80% of the cost.
Under the resiliency fund, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Well, bring him in.
Okay, next, I think, I'll talk to Ramon about setting that up.
Bring him in.
Okay, that's fair.
Wait a minute, wait a minute.
The engineer talking about his Nasby lawn.
Yeah. So he can
Why would you
explain.
want to do that?
Well, he wants to discuss the idea of whether it's going right under the middle of the road between the existing entrance and the new entrance,
Yeah.
or is this underpass going right up near the new intersection?
Exactly.
That's where I want to see what he has to say.
Okay, thank you. Now, what's next item, Ramon?
Looks like.
Okay, so the recommendation on this one was that we would use the feedback from the mayor's AT task force to help us refine our priorities for the upcoming capital budget. Are we okay with that recommendation?
I think, yeah, we advance it, sure, absolutely. So, everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Right? And not to belabor the
Require
point,
resolution?
pardon me?
Require a resolution? No?
We
No, I
do
don't think so.
resolutions in the committee meetings, we just do
Just advance it.
Okay.
So,
for council.
pardon me?
Resolutions are for public meetings.
That's right.
No motion to approve it?
No, we just advance, we look at it, and when we do our
I
priorities.
think the committee agrees
Yeah.
with the man.
Okay, so, our next item, a request to re-urban. Can you help me with that word, Ramon?
Riparian, so stream.
Yeah,
Yeah.
zone protection and enforcement. Alistair, you know what? You're on.
All right, well, give some that. So this is coming out of some public concerns of residents of the city, as well as some local watershed groups. They're having some concerns regarding the runoff from developments and construction of new roadworks and how that's affecting the water quality in our watersheds.
Okay,
So this is something we've been kind of talking, or not specifically me, but the environment and sustainability staff have been looking into trying to come up with a way to mitigate some of these water quality issues. And now this riparian zone is not under municipal jurisdiction, it's under provincial, so that's why there was previously in this year, staff from ENS met with staff with the province, including elected officials, to look into ways we can collaborate and discuss these issues of runoff and pesticides going into the riparian zones as well as the streams. So out of that, there wasn't anything fully decided. It was during the, or still is COVID, but it was during the COVID, and they had a lot of their staff and environmental officers were committed elsewhere. And what we wanted to see was a environmental officer that is mainly focused in the central urban areas of Charlottetown and is more heavily trained on these kinds of developments that we see within the cities rather than agriculture sites that a lot of the environmental officers are taking the time to go and see across the island. So with that, we had a meeting of the urban watershed groups, which included representatives from several departments within the staff here at the city, Brights Creek in the watershed group, as well as Ellens Creek. And we all discussed it, and everyone agreed that sending a letter from the mayor's office to the province would be the next step forward to kind of formally request that they dedicate one of their environment officers to cover solely the area of Charlottetown. And we've also been in talks with Stratford and Cornwall. They've also had similar concerns come up in their areas, and they're still kind of trying to decide on how they want to tackle this issue. But if they decide that they want to be involved in this letter to the province from not just the city here, but from their towns as well, they will be included in that if they decide on that. So attached to this is a letter kind of stating similar to what I just talked about, the background, what we've talked about between the city and the province, as well as what we are seeking from the province.
Sounds great. So, Mr. Chair, I know Councillor McCabe has an issue that relates to work that's been going on out in Andrews Pond. Have you brought it up to planning that the runoff, this is what he's talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So his letter is looking at dedicating an environmental officer for urban areas, not just...
Yeah, so the idea would be that they would focus on these urban developments, and they would kind of liaise with the different contractors and associations within the urban areas and that work within our district of Charlottetown, so that they can foster a good relationship and understanding of what the provincial legislation requires them to do as they work within these riparian areas or with projects that may have a direct effect on these areas. So it's really getting someone to focus in on our area, which we as a city cannot tackle at enforcement or...
So are you, sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Well, what I was going to suggest, first of all, great report. Good report, good work. What I was going to suggest is a motion from this committee, bring it to council, if all council endorse it.
Well,
So-
I got some questions about it first.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying, just trying to lay out.
This may not help us at all if I'm reading this right.
Pardon me?
This may not help us, what we're looking for.
Okay, go ahead.
So is this just the riparian zones we're talking about, or is this for construction, that water runoff goes into our storm sewers, which then go into Andrews Pond or other watersheds?
I could cover that.
So yes, exactly. So those are the kinds of challenges that we're dealing with. We've got a road project, we've got a construction project. There's runoff coming off the site. They don't have the proper protections in place to manage runoff. That is outside of our jurisdiction. We can't intervene in that, and it's not within our planning
Planning and development.
planning either. So they take care of the building, it's the area and it's the runoff and the land around that we're having the challenge with. So the idea here is that if we had an environment officer that was focused on that kind of projects, they could be meeting proactively with developers about what are the proper protections that you need to have in place around this.
Great idea.
They can be, and then they'll also be aware of enforcement. It's kind of like our tree protection bylaw. We do both. We educate a lot, we do a lot of info sessions, and then we go and do site inspections. But we're just finding they want to help us, but they are so focused on agricultural related infractions that they're, unless it's really dire, they're not necessarily coming to visit our sites. So when we talked, Councillor McCabe, I and Alex met with the province, we met with Minister Jameson and some of her staff. When we talked to them, one of the ideas we floated is, you've got these environmental officers, could you ever allocate one to the urban areas to focus specifically on development-related infractions and education, rather than us trying to just call, like the watershed groups will call me and say there's water running down all this hill, it's like there's silt everywhere, and will you call the province, and then you call the province, they may or may not get there in time. Like, it's not, there's not enough proactive work being done on that.
Well, I think you raise a good, just want to follow what Ramona said. I agree with Ramona in that we're not proactive, and it's not being critical, we just don't have the resources and the staff that's dedicated to that type of a responsibility and accountability. I brought this up before, Council, Greg was chair of planning, water runoff when development takes place on adjacent property owners are frustrated. We
I think
have,
we're talking two different things.
No, I know, but-
You're talking about rainwater. I'm talking about silt.
We're talking,
well, we're talking about development.
We're talking about development
Yeah.
with siltation.
I know, but development that has an impact and effect on the adjacent property next to it, right?
That's under our planning act.
Yeah, I know, but you know what the problem is, Terry, just on that? It's not being enforced.
Yeah,
but that's a separate issue. What Alistair's talking about.
Yeah, I know.
What I'm trying to get here is that, I could point out a property right now, that's at the end of Oak Drive, that was built this summer. Double lot, duplex is built, there's another lot there, nothing's been grown over it, it's red clay, and every time it rains, guess where that's going?
Yeah.
Because, and we were always told through planning, that this is a bylaw that needs to be enacted, it's gonna be a public meetings this summer, to have public consultation before the bylaw is put in, so we can act on it. Right now we can't. We're all told. So now if we get the province to get a guy, and that's great if it works. They have teeth in their bylaws.
In their laws. They're
Yeah.
not bylaws, laws, yeah.
So what I'm gonna, so there's a number of properties. I think what John Andrews and the group's been asking for a couple of years now is, when somebody opens up the ground in development, how long do they have before it has to be grassed over? 3 months? But sometimes
Good
it's a year.
question. I don't know,
That's what
maybe
needs
we
to
can
be
put it, maybe we can put in place of timelines and timeframes
Yeah,
that,
no,
There is no time.
Right.
there is none. And the other problem that we have, Alistair, with our zoning development bylaw, we have no summary offense taken. So if someone breaks the bylaw, we would take them to court. We just can't issue it. It's not like Nova Scotia. But on this letter, right, you're talking about construction season, correct? Like this,
Yeah, I guess maybe more.
this tends to happen during construction. I think, and I agree with the Councillor Tweed, who's back to council, but I think we should have a template for the three capital area municipalities, Stratford, Charlottetown, and Cornwall. Let's try to get that in place first and get each of the councils, like Councillor Tweed was, pass it. That will have much more kick to it than just us going on our own. Because
And just an
Cornwall,
update to this, though, I did talk to Cornwall and Stratford, and they are both, if this committee is supportive of this letter going forward, they are both supportive of signing it.
Okay.
I can't see why not.
Yeah,
Okay.
they want to.
Okay,
It
so
makes
what we'll
sense
do-
to have one person that you know you can call, and you build that relationship, sort of like the police officer in the school, when it happens, it does reduce a lot of other kind of work that happens, right, when you know you're
we'll
calling.
bring a motion
Yeah.
bring a motion
And if
to,
there's
Every
gaps
time.
in the regulations, then that's something this person will know about and see about, and they can work on it. Like, the idea is, if you give this person for a 1-year trial on a pilot, that we can kind of work on some of these issues, right? Like that runoff scenario that you're talking about where it's bare earth and there's nothing put in to stabilize. Let's put together some promotional materials or educational materials on that. Let's start to draft some legislation on that, like
So
those
that
types
makes
of
me, that
things.
makes me ask the question, why do we need the provincial? Why can't we hire someone on a temporary basis to try it and see if it works? Like, what's the difference? Why are we going to the province and begging them for something?
Because there's gonna be a whole big section of the work that's gonna be outside of our jurisdiction.
Provincial
Whereas if we have a
responsibility.
provincial person allocated to this project, they can enforce the existing legislation that they have, which is riparian risk, and they can help support sort of the larger development issues that we have. Whereas if we hired somebody, they wouldn't have the authority to enforce the
We
provincial
can't
legislation.
take it. Like, we have to take everybody to court. I think that where we're going, but I really,
As long as it works, I'm
Yeah.
okay with it. I just don't, I just want to make sure this guy's going to have jurisdiction and we're solving the problem we're talking about.
Yeah.
Riparian zone, to me, there's a riparian zone that we can't touch. If developers in there, yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah.
But that's a separate issue as far as all the siltation going into the ponds and streams.
Yeah.
I mean, it's part and parcel. I don't know how much the riparian zone people are developing into. And I would think through planning, when they apply for a building permit, they would know here's a riparian zone you can't touch.
no,
It's not
working.
happening.
It's not happening, you're right.
It's not happening because it's not being reported, so this.
Well, no, I have to disagree. It is being reported, but you know what? There's no enforcement.
Well, that
We can't do
riparian
it.
zone is under the
Huh?
province now.
No, I'm talking,
No, no,
I'm
just
talking,
but I'm talking the riparian zone, it's under the provincial jurisdiction now, so it's being reported. So it's up to them, because they have the jurisdiction to issue tickets and fines.
anyway.
So
I think
that's the only point I'm trying to make is what we're asking for is what we're getting.
Yeah, and I hear your point on that. I think there are things that are gonna be outside of this person's jurisdiction, but I like the idea of us having somebody in the field that's a watchdog on these specific issues. Maybe we don't have all the tools that we need
It's a great
to
start.
go
Yeah.
forward, but we can at least identify some of those gaps, maybe through
and
this
Mr. Chair,
process.
that's what I was gonna say.
So
It's a great
siltation is
start.
something that could fall under them, we have siltation running into our streams.
I want to look closer at that before I would answer you, just because my understanding is if you've got silt ending up in the stream, even if it's not from the riparian area, that would still be a provincial
Provincial
jurisdiction.
issue,
But I don't know if I know that 100% sure enough to say yes to that.
So Council,
Thank you, Ramona.
do you want to bring that this?
Yeah, we'll bring a motion to council.
But all I'm asking is that we want to make sure that Minerva and Ogden will sign on to it. Can
Well,
we-
we'll do our part.
No,
We'll do
but I
our
think
part.
it's a,
Roland has said that they're good.
Yeah,
What?
Robert's.
Okay.
I just want to, can I just finish up, sir? I just want to say thank you for doing this, because I know Councilor McCabe has been pushing this for the last year about what's going on up there on McCrae Drive. So this is a move in the right direction. Now, we might not get everything we want, but at least it gets the ball rolling.
Okay, so, move motion?
No, I'm not real clear.
Okay.
I'll move the motion.
I do like the idea of
Yeah.
getting somebody to look into the responsibility. What I'm trying to figure out is, what jurisdiction does it have? Because what we're talking.
We'll have more work
she's
done,
got-
we'll have more research done, and Ramon will send out a clarification before the resolution comes to council. What's that sound?
Yeah. Moved.
Moved, second. All in favor? Motion carried, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, good work. Okay, next item.
Climate change.
Applications to the Climate Change Fund. Come on.
Okay, so this is the last report I have for the evening. Excuse me, the province announced a provincial climate challenge fund. It's $5 million. No, sorry, it's a $1 million fund, and projects can be up to 100,000. Municipalities are eligible, as well as businesses, not-for-profits, and a few others. And Essentially, it's looking at how we better prepare to adapt to the impacts of climate change. The project that we've been discussing at the staff level would be a project focused on mitigating flood damage to properties as well as managing flood in public land. So we would do a combination of projects. The first would be we need to select an area, and they have a very specific criteria of how we select that area. Select an area where we have a city park that is challenged with a flooding issue as a result of having precipitation or storm surge. We would do a project at that park using green infrastructure to better manage the water on site. We would also be working with homeowners in the area to do assessments of their
I got
properties.
just the project.
Victoria Park, I mean.
Oh, no. Just the project.
Where there's flooding issues for the homeowners, so we would be helping them to do assessments of their properties to help manage their flood risk, as well as supporting them in implementing a couple of projects, kind of similar to the neighborhood energy project, kind of on a trial basis. We'd be looking to raise their awareness through the project, as well as raise their preparedness for the impacts of climate change. Then we would do a number of public education sessions. So some would be for the homeowners in that area. There would be another for homeowners generally, and then a third for the engineering development community that might be working on these types of projects. So we would profile some of the green infrastructure projects. Total application, I think, what did we say here? So it would be a $130,000 project that includes wages. We'd be looking for $91,000 to come from the Climate Challenge Fund, and the $39,000 would be in our budget for next year. So we're looking for council support to contribute $39,000 towards this $130,000 project in our next year's operational budget, assuming that contingent on the funding application being successful.
Moved.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Second?
I'll move it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. The park,
Fast.
park is Desperate Park and Queen Street, the flooding.
Victoria Park.
Let's get
It's an
project first.
interesting, the criteria that they
Christmas
want.
wish list
you to
already.
use.
The water comes
I'll
up.
jot down both those on.
Please, because Ramona, Desperate, and of course,
Water
Queen
table's
Street.
almost up to the ground.
what?
The water table's almost up to the level of ground.
Well, I mean, the water comes up that high, Ramona.
10th Street too by Joe Gibbs Park.
Okay, that was a pretty productive meeting. I know that Greg has to go. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Notice this meeting had taken place entirely in a public forum. A new philosophy, truth and transparency.
And accountability.
Oh, yeah.
Here, here. Here, here.
Good job, Ramona. Thank you, Cindy. Great job.